Right now, meteorologists around the country are developing their forecasts for the upcoming 2024 Atlantic hurricane season. And so far, almost all of these forecasts are calling for an extremely active year, in some cases way beyond anything that's been predicted before. In this video, I'm going to explain to you why that is, and I'm also going to tell you what I think about the pattern developing that will dictate our tropical season. Meteorologists at Colorado State University were some of the first ones to come out with a bold and unprecedented forecast this year. In fact, the hurricane forecast from CSU includes the highest number of hurricanes ever predicted in April by the organization since they began. The outlook is aggressive, touting a total of 23 named storms, 11 hurricanes, and 5 major hurricanes. And the lead meteorologist in charge of this forecast even said that those numbers are actually pretty conservative if you look at the current model guidance. To put that into perspective, last hurricane season we had 20 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes, which technically counts as an above average season, but there were only 4 direct U.S. impacts. Hurricane Idalia was the storm of the year, which slammed into Florida as a powerful Category 3 hurricane in late August, and there were definitely some big problems that came along with that. But for the most part, if you lived along the coast, even though last year was above average, you probably didn't notice. But this year, not only could there be more general tropical activity, but we could also be looking at more direct impacts here in the U.S. In stark contrast from last season, a stronger high-pressure system is expected to develop near Bermuda and the Azores, which should deflect more storms westward into the Caribbean and the United States. If this high-pressure system sets up the way that we think it will, it could be a worst-case scenario for the U.S., as it's almost certain at this point that there's going to be a ton of storms forming as soon as hurricane season starts. And we usually say that hurricane season has started whenever the waters in the Atlantic get to around 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's usually happening around June 1st, and it lasts until around November 30th. But here's the kicker. Water in the Atlantic's main development region, the MDR, which stretches from the Lesser Antilles all the way over to Africa, are already as warm as they should be in late June or early July. This is due to the fact that the North Atlantic Ocean is on a streak of more than 400 days straight of being unprecedentedly warm. And once again, to put that into perspective, the Atlantic water temperatures recorded this March are even warmer than they were in the March ahead of our blockbuster seasons like 2005 and 2020. Of course, if you remember 2005, that year was nuts, featuring historic hurricanes like Hurricane Katrina, Rita, and Wilma. And 2020 currently stands as the most active year ever as far as tropical systems go in the Atlantic. So the fact that our water temperatures currently show analog connections to those record-breaking years is concerning. Not only will all of this warm water promote frequent storm development, but it's also going to increase the potential for systems to undergo rapid intensification, a phenomenon that has occurred a lot in recent years with historic hurricanes. And if that wasn't enough by itself, another thing we have to consider when making our hurricane forecast this year is the fact that our El Nino Southern Oscillation is going negative, which basically means that we're going from El Nino to La Nina as we go into hurricane season. This matters because it's one of the biggest indicators of how strong or weak or how intense a hurricane season is going to be. But before we dig too deep into that, and I promise we're going to, since this year looks like it's going to be very active, I'm probably going to be live a lot on this channel with hurricane coverage. So in order to ensure that we can pay for all those storm chasers and all the other bills that go along with an endeavor like that, let's take a moment to shout out our awesome sponsor for today's video, Henson Shaving, buy once, use for life. You heard that right. This bad boy right here is a lifetime shaving buddy. It's a shaving tool made to aerospace standards at a facility where they have been making satellites for 20 years. You guys have probably noticed this, but when you go to the store, especially if you go to like the razor blade aisle, everything is made from a for-profit standpoint. You put the AL13 in your hand for 1 second and you're going to realize that that's not the case here. It feels nice, it looks nice, and it really feels like it's going to work better than any other razor you've ever had. And it will. And on top of that, it's going to last because the AL13 is completely plastic free, including the packaging. So with the durability here, it's probably the last razor you'll ever need. And even though it feels and looks like something only rich people can have, it's not expensive. In fact, over a short period of time, you're going to save significant money by using something like this. This is a game changer, and if you want a reliable shave, you ought to choose Henson Shaving. Go ahead and click that link at the very top of the description and get started with a shaving journey that you will not soon regret, I promise. Now let's get back into the video. You see, the El Nino Southern Oscillation, or ENSO, is basically basically just the observation of temperature anomalies in the Pacific. This winter, we were in an El Nino pattern. This occurs whenever waters in the equatorial Pacific region are warmer than usual. And when we first started noticing this last year, we were actually hoping that it was going to last all the way into this hurricane season because El Nino in the Pacific usually leads to greater thunderstorm frequency around the equator, and that sends a lot of trade winds over Central America, and ultimately it creates a lot of wind shear in the Caribbean. When we have El Nino in place during hurricane season, it sometimes creates a wall that hurricanes either avoid or they get torn apart by right before entering the area where we would be concerned about them in the US. But when those waters start to cool off and they get cooler than average, we call that La Nina. This decreases the thunderstorm activity down there, and it decreases the wind shear in the Caribbean. And this kind of just opens the gates to allow storms to enter the US. And that's exactly what we expect to happen this year. The faster that transition from El Nino to La Nina occurs, the more active this hurricane season is going to be. And once again, it's really important to note that these big hurricane years of the past, like 2005 and 2020, were also La Nina years. So the similarities just keep stacking up. Of course, that does not mean that this year is going to be an exact repeat of those years. It doesn't even really mean that it's going to be close, but I think it's important to point out that based on the current data, all the ingredients are in place to create a situation where something like that is at least possible this season. But with all that being said, here's what you actually came here for. My official 2024 Atlantic hurricane season preliminary forecast. Based off of everything we've learned in this video, along with a lot of analysis and studying of several forecast models, here's what I've come up with. I actually agree with the Colorado State University meteorologists, and I think we're going to have an aggressive year in terms of overall storm formation. In fact, I'm going to lean a little bit more into the guidance and go ahead and put a higher number down. I think we're going to see 25 named storms this year at least. Because conditions are going to be so favorable for these storms to intensify into hurricanes, I think we're going to see higher hurricanes than usual. In fact, I'm going to go with 13 expected. And as we mentioned before, rapid intensification is going to be something that we really have to watch out for this year. And for that reason, I'm going to say that at least 6 major hurricanes are going to be occurring this year, which is double the average. Now, I don't have any sort of prediction as to how many of these are going to directly affect the US. There's really no way of knowing that right now, but I do think that a lot more of them are going to have the real opportunity to make it into the US this year than they did last year. Thanks to that Bermuda high that's likely going to form and the warm waters in the Caribbean, there could be a lot more direct US impacts than any of us would like to see this year. But as always, don't be scared, be prepared. Hurricanes are big, mean, and scary, but this just means that we can actually see them from a long ways away. So as long as you pay attention to the weather, you're going to have plenty of time to prepare in the event of a big hurricane coming for your area. Go ahead and go over your hurricane plan, the evacuation routes, pack a go bag, and all that good stuff, and just stay tuned here. Make sure you're paying attention as we get deeper into hurricane season. Us weather people are often wrong, but even if we're not, the odds of a big hurricane coming right for your house are extremely low, even in a situation where we have an above average season. Of course, if things get gnarly, I'm going to be live right here on the channel with all of our storm chasers on the ground, meteorologist Andy Hill, our scientific probes out there, the surge detectors, and everything else like that to make sure you have a complete understanding of what's going on while it's happening. So make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn notifications on so you never miss a live stream. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Ooh.